So let's get started. So I will be sharing this document once the session is done. Okay. So first, what we'll do is we'll actually set up a multi-node environment. Whenever you talk about these technologies, it's better to have a proper simulated environment. That way, you'll be understanding the concepts clearly. If you try to use only one system, it might not make you understand the concepts clearly. There will be some gaps, and you will tend to forget, and it will be very tough every time you have to start from scratch. So that's why you have to have appropriate environment to learn any technology, especially with respect to dealing with clusters. Okay. So Kerberos is primarily to simplify the authentication process. Instead of remembering passwords on all the servers, we don't. We just have to remember one password probably, and as long as the account is authenticated in Kerberos, you should be able to access all the servers without too much of overhead. And also, it will actually provide additional security. So when it comes to authentication, using password login is the least safe approach. If it is prompting for the password and if you have to enter the password, it is the least safe approach to actually get into a server, which means authenticating to the server. So Kerberos will actually not only enhance the authentication with a lot more secure features, and also it simplifies it. That being said, as admin, we should be able to set up Kerberos, whether it is a big data world or even outside big data world also, we tend to use Kerberos sometimes. But with Hadoop and all, it is quite popular, especially with distributions like Cloudera, Hortonworks and all. The authentication is typically done using Kerberos itself. That being said, let us start with the architecture. Okay, and then we'll actually set up the environment and then we'll take it further. So here I'm just going to Kerberos wiki. I hope it has a picture. If it doesn't have picture, then we will go to Google. So you can see here. So you have a client. A client is nothing but the machine using which you are trying to authenticate into an environment. So typically it will be the one of the node in the cluster, and most likely it will be the gateway node. Once you get onto the gateway node of the cluster, which will act as a client, if you want to start any services in the cluster and all, you should be authenticated to do so. So that's where this authentication server comes into picture, and then the service server comes into picture. So we will get into those details as we proceed further. So the authentication server is called as KDC. It is the one which actually takes care of 1 minute. Yeah, it is the one which will actually take care of. I think these terms are a bit different. So authentication server and service server. I will come back on this. Typically, when you actually go through the Kerberos official documentation, they call it as KDC, Key Distribution Center, and that Key Distribution Center have multiple components in it. They are nothing but the authentication server, the ticket granting server, and the principals database. So there will be two processes which will be running in the background. One is to grant the tickets, and second one is to authenticate using the tickets. So if you actually map this to the diagram, so this is the one which actually give the tickets or assign the tickets, and this is the one which actually authenticate. Okay, so we'll get into those details. So all you need to understand is there is a server or server component with respect to Kerberos, and it have multiple components. In a true production environment, there can be two physical servers on which the authentication server and service server might have been distributed. But for learning purposes, we can have both authentication as well as service servers running on one machine. Okay, that will be considered as Kerberos master. So you can have a single master, you can have multiple masters, but there will be master components, and then each client has to be added to something called as principals, and those principals have to be stored in the database. So that being said, to understand these details, we'll be primarily setting up a three node environment or three server environment. Okay. For that, what you can do is you can actually go to the uh, GitHub repository of mine, which is nothing but github.com/dgadiraju. And then if you go to repositories, there is a repository called as multi-node. Okay. So using this multi-node, you should be able to create multiple virtual machines very quickly. Go to virtual box and manually set install operating system, and you have to configure networking. It will take at least half a day to 1 day if you do not make any mistakes to actually come up with multi-node environment. But if you use Vagrant on top of VirtualBox, it will be much faster. So VirtualBox is the main technology to actually create virtual machines. Vagrant is the wrapper on top of it to automate the process of creating the virtual machines, configuring the network between them, etc. So you can actually go through this repository, and you can actually go through the README file, and I have given all the instructions there. You can actually set up 7 servers or up to 10 servers using this code onto your PC. So as long as you have a 16 GB PC, you should be able to create these virtual machines on our PC itself. It can be Windows or it can be Mac or Ubuntu based desktop. That being said, I hope you are comfortable with the Git. You just have to copy this link, and then you just have to say git clone and paste that link. If you don't have Git, you have to install Git, and then you have to run this command. Once you create this repository locally, it will be named as multinode. There will be a directory wherever you clone, and that directory name is nothing but multinode. And if you look at the files, we have a Vagrant file, a bootstrap.sh file, and manifest.yml file. So manifest.yml file will actually tell how many instances to be created, what is the provider that needs to be used. In servers, typically we will not use VirtualBox, but we use something called as libvirt. So if you are using a 64 GB CentOS 7 machine, probably it is better to consider libvirt than VirtualBox. So there are different types of providers which can be used to create virtual machines. So in Linux world, the most popular virtualization tool is nothing but KVM. So KVM is alternative for VirtualBox. VirtualBox on almost all the platforms, KVM typically works on Linux only. And then there is a property called as the name prefix. So all the virtual machines will be created with this prefix. And then I'm incrementing starting from 1. So this will work up to 10. So you can start with KRB1 till KRB9 or KRB0 to KRB9. And the suffix will be .itversity.com. The reason why it will only work with 10 from 0 to 9 is this one. So if you know about these IP addresses, you have 4 octet IP. In IP address, we have 4 octets, and the maximum value it can go up to is nothing but 255. So beyond 255, you cannot have in each of these octets, which are separated by dots, right? So here I have given IP prefix as 2 zeros. So it will start with 200, and then it can go up to 209. After that, it will be 2010. It will not be 210. I don't have the logic to actually take it to 210. It will just be 2010, which is not correct. And hence, if you try to create more than 10 virtual machines, this code will not work. And this code is developed by me only. So this is manifest file. The actual code is in Vagrant file. Vagrant file is nothing but a Ruby script. If you are familiar with Ruby, you can understand very easily. If you are not familiar with Ruby, just ignore it for now. And then disk size is 16 GB. So each virtual machine will be created with 16 GB disk mounted onto it. And memory is 1 GB. CPU is 1. And then we'll be having CentOS 7 operating system on each of these virtual machines. And then there's a file called as bootstrap.sh. It will take care of setting up users, adding the user to a group, etc. So you can actually see what we have in the bootstrap.sh. Okay, it is nothing but adding a user called admin with password itversity. and then it is actually adding this user to wheel. Wheel is nothing but a sudo group, and when we sudo after logging in as admin, we don't want to prompt for the password. That's why we have updated this etc shd underscore config. So this is a simple shell script which I want to run once the virtual machines are created. Now you can also look at vagrant file. It is reading that manifest.yml file. It will create those 3 virtual machines. This is all Ruby code which is uh, uh, created to actually process that information, and based on that create virtual machines. And then in each of the virtual machine, in the end, it is trying to run bootstrap.sh. You can actually see path is nothing but a configuration of path, and in the configuration file, path is nothing but bootstrap.sh. So it is loading that script and running it after creating the virtual machines. Now, once you set up the environment, when you clone, the values might be a bit different. Make sure you adjust so that you only create 3 virtual machines. Otherwise, it will create 7 or 8 virtual machines by default, and you might run into out of memory issues. Now, if I say vagrant up, okay, it will create 3 virtual machines with CentOS 7, and also it will take care of networking between all the 3. So you don't need to worry too much about anything. So it is a very good tool to provision the virtual machine and streamline the process. And you should explore these things. Even though Vagrant is not very popular now, still they are using to automate the development and testing environments creations using virtual machines on a big servers. But after Docker is successful, people stopped using Vagrant that extensively. But still, it is a good tool to learn. You will understand how things are automated, and it will definitely help you in understanding other important concepts as system admins. So if you have time after learning the big data and all, I would highly recommend you to understand a bit on virtual machines, especially using Vagrant to automate. So if you use VirtualBox to take care of creating these 3 virtual machines, it will take at least half day after practicing for a while. To begin with, it might take even a couple of days. And most of the time will be taken in configuring the network so that each of these virtual machines can be communicated with each other. With Vagrant, it will be ready once this is done. Probably within 5 minutes, it will be done. You don't need to manually do anything. So let's wait until this setup is done. Then we'll actually take to the next step. So once we create the virtual machines, the next step is to actually get into the installation of Kerberos. So as I have mentioned to you earlier, Kerberos have clients as well as servers, and those servers can be deployed on one machine. So in this case, we are doing so. So both authentication server as well as service server will be deployed on one of those 3 machines, and that will be KRB0. The other 2 will act as client. Okay, so if you want to set up a particular server as a server, then you have to install this package. So as we are using CentOS 7, we can use the M to download and install the packages. So this is required to actually set up both the master components. If you want to set up authentication server on one and service server on another, you have to install this KRB5-server on 2 machines. And then including servers, whatever is designated as a client, you have to install this package called as KRB5-workstation. And then PAM underscore KRB5 also have to be installed. I still do not understand what is the purpose of this, but as per the documentation which I'm referring, they refer to install PAM underscore KRB5. Once I understand, probably I will explain. For now, make sure you understand that these 2 are the main packages with respect to Kerberos. The servers which are designated as masters for Kerberos should actually have this installed. So it contains something called as KDC, and that KDC will have both the components, authentication server as well as service server. And then all the servers, both clients as well as the servers on which or masters on which the KDC is supposed to be configured should have this calbify-workstation. Workstation stands for client. Okay, so let's see if the setup is done. Everything is done. So I have created a username called as admin on all the 3 virtual machines. After actually creating the virtual machines, if you want to use the readable names such as klb0.itvers.com, klb1.itvers.com, klb2.itvers.com rather than the IP addresses, you have to update the etc host file. So let me say this. You can see that I have updated the etc host file so that I can use these ones to actually connect to those particular servers. So in this case, I can say sh admin at klb0.itvers.com and hit enter. Yes, yes, password. And you are now in the first server. Like that, you can actually try the other 2 also. Let me clean up my known host file. And then what I will be doing is I will be saying sh copy ID to admin at klb0.itversity.com so that we don't need to enter password from next time. I will do that even for klb1.itversity.com. And then klb2.itversity.com. So if you are comfortable with SSH, what you can do is you can actually run commands on the remote machines without getting in there. So you can just say sh admin at klb0.itversity.com, and then in double quotations, sorry, not double quotations, but double quotes, you can actually issue a command to run on the remote server and come back to the client from where we are trying to connect and run this command. So in this case, I just want to say sudo m-y install, and then these 3 packages on klb0.itvers.com. Now it will connect to the remote machine and it will try to install those packages, and it will get the control back to us. Once we set up on klb0.itvers.com, we can set up on the other 2 hosts also. Or while this is running, you can actually open another tab, and then you should be able to install on other servers also. So in this case, we will be installing only workstation and pam_klb5 on klb1.itvers.com. Same thing on the klb2.itvers.com. While it is running, I can actually connect to one of the servers. So let me connect to admin at klb2.itvers.com. Now, if I want to connect to klb0.itvers.com, I can use the same sh admin command like this. In this case, I might have to give the IP address. As of now, we didn't update the etc host file on these servers. So probably I can give the IP address like this 192.168. I forgot the IP address. Let me say ping klb2.itvers.com. It is nothing but 192.168.100.202. So let me log into the one of the servers, and then let me try sh admin at, enter this IP address, and you can see that it is prompting for the password. If you want to enable passwordless login, we can run sh keygen, and we can actually copy the public key from this machine onto the authorized keys onto the any of these servers. So in this case, accidentally I try to sh onto the same server. If you want to sh onto 200, which is nothing but klb0.itvers.com, even then it will prompt for the password. So whenever you try to connect any of these servers from any of the other servers, it will prompt for the password by default. We can enable passwordless login by using SH keygen, or we can also use Kerberos. So in this case, we'll be using Kerberos. First, we'll install Kerberos and configure them. Once it is done, we will actually use the Kerberos to authenticate from this server onto the kerb0.ithwas.com. That's the one of the usages which we can directly validate without setting up any other things. Similar to SH, whatever service we are going to have in the big data cluster, all those services will be managed by Kerberos for the authentication purposes once we enable Kerberos on the cluster. We will see those details either tomorrow or day after. Okay, now let me do one thing. Yeah, so I have to update host files on all the 3 machines. So what I'll be doing is, let me say cat etc hosts and then grep krb0 or krb, and then let me copy this. And I'm just updating the host files. In actual production environments, we don't update like this. They are managed by DNS server. In this case, we don't have a DNS server, and hence we are updating the etc host. etc host supersedes any DNS servers that are already there, but typically we will not be updating etc host files on all those servers in the production by manually going like this. So you need to understand this way, and for now, just remember that there is something called as DNS, which will be used to actually manage the mapping between the physical IP address. So this is physical IP, and this is the alias. Okay, so in some cases we also use DHCP. Either we use DNS or DHCP. It is worth as a system admin to spend some time on those concepts, but I'm not going to cover at this time. So please make a note of DNS and DHCP and try to explore what it is all about and why we don't need to update host files like this in actual production environments, but use DNS servers or DHCP servers. Okay, and that being said, as a Hadoop admin, you typically do not deal with these things. There will be a network support team, and they will take care of these aspects, working closely with core system admins team. Core system admins team might not work on setting up Hadoop clusters in enterprises. Hadoop administrators are next level of administrators on the system. There will be core system administrators who will be taking care of the operating system and other kernel level things. And then once the operating system is set up and the network is configured along with the DNS and all those things, then they will give you the servers to set up Hadoop. So by the time you start setting up Hadoop or any big data technology, all the operating system networking will be taken care. You don't need to break your head unless you are working for a smaller organization and if you have to take care of all those things, but it is highly unlikely. Okay, so that being said, as of now, I have updated etc host only on KRB2. Let me come out of this and connect it to KRB1 and then open the etc host file. Let me save this, come out of it, and then kerb0.ithwas.com sudo vi etc hosts, save it and come out, and then exit. Now host file is updated, and also we have installed the KRB server on KRB0 and KRB workstation on all the 3. Okay, now you have to configure. So keep this in mind whenever you are trying to set up a software. First thing you will be doing is download, then install, then configure. Once the configuration is done, if it has to be up and running all the time, we will try to enable on startups and we'll start the service. So these are 4 the standard steps which you have to focus on. So as part of the download, probably you might use wget and then download the file. If that is the case, once you download, typically when it comes to CentOS or Red Hat flavor, you will be using a command called as RPM. RPM stands for Red Hat Package Manager. Using RPM, you should be able to install the downloaded softwares. So that is one way of doing it. Download using wget or curl, install using RPM, then configure. Depending upon the tool, the way you configure it is completely different. And then you have to use systemctl to enable on startups and also start if a particular service has to be up and running all the time. So these four are the standard steps which we follow. On top of these things, you can actually automate the download and installation part using yum. Okay, so yum will take care of not only downloading and installing automatically for you. So when we say yum install Kerberos related softwares using the repo files in etc yum.repos.d, it will connect to the public repositories of Red Hat or CentOS 7 and it will download those files and install it for you. And also from the configuration perspective, it will give some default configurations. Typically, we have to change it. Even if you are using Windows, in that case also, you will be typically downloading the file first, and then it will download a exe file or MSA file. Then you will install by double clicking on it. Typically, whenever you try to install, it will ask you whether to perform a typical installation or a custom installation. Even in those aspects, it will actually take care of updating some properties internally. If you actually focus on changing the path and all those things, it has to maintain that state somewhere. So those things will be managed either in registry or in some properties file. So that's where the configuration comes into picture. Even though you might not spend time to think, even if you download a good MP4 player, in that also there will be a configuration step which will be automatically taken care when you try to install. Okay, so anytime you try to set up a software, you just have to download it, install it, configure it, and start it. Once you start it, to troubleshoot the issues, you have to go to the log files of the service, and then you should be able to troubleshoot the issues. Okay. Now let's go through the configuration. First, we want to configure KDC. KDC stands for Key Distribution Center. You can see here. So this is the one which will actually give the keys. And then it has multiple components, as I have mentioned to you earlier. One is ticket granting server, and second one is authentication server. Okay. So here we are just configuring the KDC, which means it will be impacting both ticket granting server as well as authentication server. So if you look at this file, there is something called as realm. Realm is nothing but a name mapped to your domain. Okay, so when I say itversity.com, I can consider it as a domain which is configured elsewhere. We will actually look at that file at a later point in time. So this is the name which we will be using elsewhere. And here we are defining what is the itversity.com is. So itversity.com is nothing but a Kerberos realm, and you can actually see the details about where should the ACL file should go, dict file should go, admin key tab should go, so on and so forth. Okay, so these are the locations which you should focus on. We will get into those details very soon. And all this configuration is defined under itversity.com. Okay, and also there are ports associated with this service. The port number is 88 by default. And then you have a file called as kadm5.acl. So this is the location where we find that file. We have to add this to actually tell the default permissions when a user is added as admin. So if you add any user as admin to itversity.com realm, that user should get all the permissions with respect to Kerberos. That's what it means here. Okay. If you don't want to give any user that is added to admin with all the permissions, then you can actually specify the specific users also. Okay, but here any user who is tagged as admin can actually have full permissions with respect to Kerberos. The permissions are primarily to create something called as principals and all. We will actually look into those details as we proceed further. Okay, again, if you look at this, the realm is defined here, and we are using this realm, and whatever users that are created as admins under this realm will have full permissions. So we have to update these two files. So let's go into the KLB0, which is the server where the KDC components will be running. So I'm going to the uh, first server by saying shadmin at KLB0. Okay, now I can sudo as root, then go to where Kerberos, and then KRB5 KDC. This is the location where we have both kdc.conf and kadi5.acl. Now, if you look at kdc.conf, the default realm name is example.com. We have to change it to whatever name we want as part of our company. So in this case, I'm saying itversity.com. In your case, you can give whatever name you want. Okay. And these are the configurations for this realm. So the ACL file will go to this location, the same location where the KDC configuration file is, and then dict file, and then admin key tab, so and so forth. You don't need to break your head around these words, admin key tab, etc. Let's save it and come out of it. Now, as kdc.conf is done, we can actually go to kadm.acl, and we want to change this to itversity, which means any user which is tagged as admin in itversity.com realm should get all the permissions to manage the KDC. Now save it and come out of it. Once that is done, we also need to update this file under etc kerb etc. There is a file called as kerb5.conf. So you just have to say vi etc kerb5.conf. So here we are telling where the server is. So we are actually defining the configuration for the client. So we have KRB5 server. Let me go back here and go through the packages which are installed. We have KRB5 server and KRB5 workstation. So the first two files which we have configured are related to server. The third one is related to client. Okay. And if you look at the client configuration, it will typically tell where the KDC is. So let me copy paste this, and then I will explain. So I'm deleting all the contents and pasting this. Now, if you look at this, there are some things related to logging, which means where the log file should go. So the KDC log file will go to here. And also we have kadmin-d. So admin server is the one which will actually take care of creating the tickets for you, I guess. So I still confuse what are the primary responsibilities of admin server and KRB5. I will try to explain those things later, but don't break your head if you don't understand. Just make sure that all those things are taken care by the server itself, which is nothing but KRB0. Whatever components that are installed and configured under KRB5 server, that will take care of both authentication server and the service server. Okay, and then there are some lib defaults. Even these things you don't need to worry, but realms you have to worry about, and also domain realm. So if you look at realms, we are saying that itversity.com realm or KDC for this realm is actually deployed on kerb0.itversity.com, and admin server is also deployed on kerb0.itversity.com. If you separate the authentication server and service server into two different systems, then you have to define two different values for KDC and admin server. In our case, both of them are running on the kerb0.itversity.com itself. And then we can also configure the domain realm. So anything that is using itversity.com domain, we are saying that it should use itversity.com itself as realm, and that's how we are actually mapping the servers to this realm. And the realm definition is under the first properties file which we have looked into. Okay, now let me save this. Once this is updated, now we should be able to create a database. So again, if you look at the components of KDC, there are three components. One is KDC, sorry, not KDC. The three components are nothing but ticket granting server, authentication server, and then the database which will actually store the details about the users and hosts. I will explain what will be there in this database in a moment. But first, let me create a database using this command. Okay, so whenever you run these commands or whenever you perform any operation in Kerberos, you can go to where Kerberos KRB5 KDC, the location which we have seen earlier, and we should be able to see what is going on internally. So in this case, I'm entering the database master key. So you can give whatever you want. Okay. Now, if you go to it, where, so all the server stuff is under where Kerberos, and then KRB5 KDC. Okay. Earlier we have only these two files. Let me show you. Yeah, here. So we were in the same location, and when we run ls-ltr, kdc.conf and kadm5.acl are the only ones which were there. But now there's a principal added automatically for us whenever we created this database. Okay, so this is the first one which is created for us. Then so this is what database is. A database is nothing but this one. This will contain all the principals. So here you need to understand the definition of the principal. So a principal is nothing but a host or a user. We will get into those details in a moment. As we are done with all the three components, the three components are nothing but authentication server, ticket granting server, and the database. We have taken care of all the three things. Now let me start the KRB5 KDC K admin. Okay, so we are actually starting the authentication server and ticket granting server, and then we are enabling on the startups by saying sudo systemctl enable KRB5 KDC as well as KAdmin. So it will not only start these services, it will also enable them on the boots. So whenever you reboot the machine, automatically they will be started as part of the startup scripts. There seems to be a question. I will take that question in a moment. Okay, and then you can also check the status to make sure that the KRB5 KDC and KAdmin are running. So we got the authentication server and ticket granting server running on this machine. Now we are getting into principals. So we can create principals for both users as well as hosts. So all the users which are having principals can be used to authenticate using the service which is configured. So later we'll be configuring the service also. First we will take care of the principals and then we'll configure the service. And when it comes to that service, only those users who have the principals from the hosts which have the principals can operate, others cannot operate. So let me explain once I go through all the steps, and then we'll take it further. So here I am adding a principal for root user. So this is the user which is actually root on the OS level, and we are saying that this the principal related to root has to be admin of Kerberos. That's why we are saying root/admin. And if you recollect, the ACL file contains that */admin, realm, itversity.com, and star, right? So whatever is tagged as admin, because we have defined in that file, will have complete control on principals. So that's where the ACL file significance lies. Okay, and to run these commands, first we have to say kadmin.local and hit enter. Then you will be in kadmin CLI connected to local KDC that is running on the server. And then you can actually run these commands like add principal root slash admin. But before running this, let me say list prints. List print stands for list principals, and you can see that there is only one principal from the actual yeah, there is only one principal from the user perspective, that is nothing but kadmin. And then from the host perspective also, there is only klb0.itverse.com. So only klb0.itverse.com and the user admin on that klb0, so not admin, kadmin on that klb0.itverse.com can do something using whatever is configured so far. Now if you want to add additional users, okay, then you can actually say add prink, and you should be able to add additional users. I will get to that in a moment. But before doing so, let us see the help. To get the help, you can say question mark and hit enter. You can get the details about all the commands that can be used to manage principals. So this admin.local is primarily to manage principals. You can add a principal, you can delete principal, modify principal, rename principal, so on and so forth. Okay, and also you can change the password, etc. Now to create a principal, you can run add print command like this. So we are trying to create a principal for root user, and we are also tagging that user as admin here. And then we can enter the password. So here we are defining the password for this user root who is admin for our Kerberos. And also I am adding a non admin user. So we are logging in to the servers using admin, right? So I'm adding a principal to admin. Okay, that's when we should be able to uh, use or leverage the SSH service as this user once we configure the service at a later point in time. For now, we are just defining a principal for user. Okay, whenever we create principal, it will ask us to create the password. So whoever want to connect using this user to leverage the service, sorry, it's not about connecting to using this user. It is primarily about leveraging the service as this user. It will actually prompt for the password. We have to create a ticket for that, and when we actually try to create a ticket, it will prompt for the password, and we have to enter the password which is added here. So that's where the authentication between the client and server will happen. So once we complete everything, you will understand. For now, we have created a principal on the server, and we have entered the password for the principal. Later, when we actually create ticket using a particular command, it will prompt for the password, and we have to enter this password at that time. Okay. On top of users, we can also create principal for the hosts. So in this case, I'm trying to create a principal for host klb0.itverse.com. So this is how you can actually create a principal for klb0.itverse.com. For hosts, it will not prompt you for the password. You are just saying that, okay, using these hosts, you should be able to authenticate as whatever principals that are created for users. Okay, so on top of klb0.itverse.com, later we will add other hosts also. For now, we are just adding klb0.itverse.com. And when we run this command kt-add, it will actually create key tab. And this will play a role when it comes to authentication. I still have to explore the concepts behind key tab. I'm not clear yet. Once I understand, I will come up with a explanation once again. But for now, whenever we add hosts, we have to run this key tab add command, kt-add command, and it will take care of adding the key tab. Okay. Once the key tab is added, now you can come out of this. Okay. So what we have done so far, we have created principal for the user admin and principal for host klb0.itverse.com. Now we have to configure the service. So the service which we are trying to validate with Kerberos is nothing but SSH. When we actually try to set up Kerberos on Cloudera machine or Cloudera cluster, we will be talking about configuring the services that are set up on the cluster. However, Cloudera automates for us. We don't have to go one service at a time the way we are doing here. But internally, whatever needs to be required for those services will be taken care by the Cloudera itself. But to configure sh, what you are supposed to do is you have to go to this file called as etc sh underscore config. Okay. And then you have to go here, and then you have to paste this. Sorry, not this one. My bad. It should be this one. Okay, now you can save it. Now you have configured the service also. But once you configure the service, what you are supposed to do is you have to enable KRB5. So here you are saying that the SSH should be managed by Kerberos, or SSH service is configured with Kerberos. So this is the command which will take care. Once you do this, you have to reload the SHD, or you have to restart the SHD. SSHD is the daemon process for the SSH. So unless and until SSHD process is up and running, you will not be able to connect from the remote machines to that machine using SSH command. So let us paste this. Make sure you run systemctl status SHD so that it is running without any issues. If there are any errors with respect to configuring the SSH client, if you mess up anything in this file, then SSH will not come up. If SSH will not does not come up, if you exit, you will not be able to connect to the server. So you have to be extremely careful with whatever changes you are making with respect to SSH configuration files. You have to take a backup, and you should not exit from the root user until the SSH is up and running. If that happens for whatever reason, then there is another way to actually connect to the server. It is called as web console, not web console. I forgot the term. It there will be a session attached to the server directly without SSH. It is called as console, but before console, I don't remember what we use, what term we use. Okay, using that approach, you should be able to connect with root username. You have to remember the root password, and then you should be able to troubleshoot the issues with respect to SSH, and then you should be able to bring up. So that being said, now SSH is configured with Kerberos. Okay, so far we have created two principles for two users. One is root, and the second one is admin. And we have created principal for one server, which is nothing but krb0.itversity.com. Now, if I run SSH admin at krb0, so I'm trying to connect to krb0 itself by using user admin itself. And if I hit enter, it is prompting for the password. So to avoid this, what we are supposed to do is you just say k init. So we are creating a ticket now. So when we say k init, it will create a ticket. Before running k init, let us run a command called as k list. As of now, it is saying credentials cache keyring persistent 1001:1000 not found, which means there are no tickets for this user admin. Okay. Now I can say k init and hit enter. It will prompt for the password. This is where we have to use the password which is given while adding principal for admin on the server. Okay, if the user who is trying to run this knet command doesn't know the password of this admin principal which is created on the server, then he will not be able to leverage Kerberos and use the service. In this case, the service is nothing but SSH. Okay, so by using password, we are not using the service. Sorry, if we type something wrong here, it will not create the token or ticket, but still you might be able to log in, but it will be prompting for the password. If it is prompting for the password, then it is not leveraging the Kerberos server. It is not being authenticated through KDC. Okay. Now I am running KNet once again. Now I will be giving the correct password, which is given when we actually created the principal for admin user on kadmin.local. Now you can say klist. By default, you will get ticket for 24 hours. Once you create the ticket, if you try to connect to the server now using leveraging SSH service, which is configured with Kerberos, it will not prompt for password anymore up to the ticket expire. So I can say sh uh, admin at krb0. Now you see it is not prompting for the password. We haven't configured any sh keys, but still we are able to log in. What happened here? There's a client, right? And as part of the client, we have said where the KDC is running. So it is connecting to that KDC using the information that is defined as part of the client. And then because we have entered the password for admin principal, uh, it have actually created the ticket, and using the ticket, now we are able to log in. Now let me exit from here. Let me exit from here. Let me log in once again as admin. Now let me, but not for this server. Now let me connect to the second one. So I'm saying admin at KRB1. So if I say sh admin at KRB0, you can see that it is prompting for the password, and from KRB1 we are able to log into KRB0 using user admin. Now admin is already added as a principal, so we have a principal for admin, right? So we don't need to create another principal as long as we want to let the user admin to leverage the asset service from that server to connect to the KRB0 in this case. Okay. So for that, what we are supposed to do, we can actually say sudo su and then say kadmin.local. Okay. And then list prints or list principals. And you can see that we already have the principal for admin and also the host krb0.itverse.com. Now I want to create additional principals for hosts. So they are nothing but krb1.itversity.com. I have to just change this to krb1. I miss a here, so let me type a. Now the principal is being created for the host krb1.itversity.com. And also I want to create the key tab. Okay. Now the key tab is created for krb1.itversity.com. The same thing we will be doing for krb2.itversity.com. Okay, now we have allowed both krb1 as well as krb2 to leverage the Kerberos to be authenticated onto krb0.itverse.com. Okay, now I can actually come out of this. I came out of all the servers. Now I am connecting to KRB1. Again, I am saying sh admin at KRB0. As of now, even though, another thing which we need to keep in mind when it comes to KRB1 and KRB2 is after adding the principals, we also need to configure the client, right? And where is the client properties file? It is nothing but etc krb5.conf, and then we have to delete this and then copy paste this information. So again, on krb1.itverse.com also we are telling where the KDC and admin server are running. Okay, so both are running on krb0.itverse.com, and we are using realm.itversity.com, which is defined as part of the main properties file, which is nothing but krb5 kdc.conf. Okay, so that actually defines the properties with respect to the realm, and we are trying to map using realm from the clients. Okay, now we have updated this properties file on the client. Okay, still if you try to use admin user to connect to KRB0, it will prompt for the password because we haven't created the ticket yet. We only configured to use the KDC, and by using that KDC we should be able to create the ticket. Once we create the ticket, as the service is enabled with as the asset service is enabled with Kerberos, we should be able to leverage that SSH service, and then we should be able to log in without being prompted for the password. So here I just have to say klist first, no tickets. So we have to create a ticket by using k init. It will prompt for the password. Whatever password is defined for principal admin, that password has to be entered here. So let me enter that password. Now I can say klist, and then I can say sh admin at krb0, and now it let us without password. So now the sh service is being used via Kerberos, where we are not prompted for the password, and we are good to go for 24 hours. Now, if you want to do it for the KRB2 also, another client, you first connect to it. Sorry, you have to connect to KRB0 first, and then let me say sudo su kadmin.local. Then okay, we already added the hosts. You can actually validate by saying list pings. We have the user admin for which the principal is added, and also principal is added for host KRB2 also, along with KRB0 and KRB1. So we have the principal for both user and host KRB2, and hence once we configure the client on KRB2, we should be able to leverage the Kerberos to connect to the machines using sh service, which is already configured with Kerberos. So now I can come out of this, go to KRB2. You can validate by saying sh admin at krb0. It will prompt for the password. You can see here. To avoid this, you can actually go to root, and then you can say etc krb5.conf, delete this, and then copy, paste it. So we are telling where the KDS is running. Come out of it. Still, if you try to connect as admin to krb0, it will prompt for the password because we haven't created the ticket. Create the ticket, and then list the tickets, and then you should be able to say sh admin at krb0, and you will be able to connect to that server without prompting for the password. So this is how we can actually validate whether Kerberos is set up properly or not. Go through this exercise several times and make sure you understand what is going on internally. So whenever you add principal, the database will be updated. The database location is nothing but where Kerberos krb5 adc and then ls7 ltr. You can see the principal.kadm and principal files. I think this is the location for the database. Anytime you add a principal, this will be updated. And also the key tab files will be created elsewhere. I haven't get a chance to understand the relevance of key tab completely. I will go through those details and I will be sharing the information very soon. Okay, so that being said, it might look very complicated to begin with, because if you have to allow a user to leverage this Kerberos for sh service, first that user need to know the password, and then he should be able to create the ticket, and then only he should be able to connect. However, when it comes to real enterprise scenario, what will happen is everything will be automated, and the users who are trying to authenticate from that server onto the KRB0, leveraging the sh which is being controlled by Kerberos, that user will not know the password. What the user will do is he will raise a ticket saying that I want access for the server for so and so time. Once the ticket is submitted, the ticket will go onto the queue of system admins. Then they will actually create the ticket, and you will receive an email. Everything will be automated. Probably there will be an approval stage which is a bit manual. Apart from that, everything will be automated. Once you place a request, once someone approves it, automatically in the background, it will create a principal for you. Sorry, not principal. If the principal doesn't exist, it might create a principal. If the principal already exists, it will create a ticket also, a ticket for you based upon how much time using which the access should be given. And then you will get an email saying that you are now authenticated to connect to that particular server. Then by logging onto the client, you should be able to connect to that particular server if you are talking about SH. But typically we don't use SH like this. But all the other services will be managed this way. So in production, where the security is key, users even like you will not be allowed directly. You have to raise the ticket, it has to be approved. You have to get an access by creating that ticket by running kinit command by the administrators, because only administrators will know the password. However, that also will be automated. Once everything is done, you just get a confirmation saying that whatever access should be given to you is given. Then you can go ahead and perform your tasks. So any production type situation, you have to work this way. Okay, in some environments it might not be very strictly enforced. In enterprises where there's the data confidentiality and all those things are taken very seriously, then you have to go through this process every time you want to access a particular server in the cluster. Okay, that being said, these are the main core concepts with respect to Kerberos. Make sure you practice quite a bit of time and let me know if you run into any issues. The main thing you need to understand is the architecture. For the architecture, you can go to the Wikipedia and you can actually see that the Kerberos, which is nothing but KDC, can be configured on multiple nodes also, where the KAdmin and KDC, which are started. If you go through the documentation, if you scroll down, we are starting two services, KRB5, KDC, and KAdmin. One is authentication server and the other one is ticket granting server. Okay, once you start these two things on two different servers, your realm will be updated on all the clients, and using that information, the ticket granting and authentication will be taken care for you. So make sure you practice on at least 3 server environment the way I have demonstrated. And if you have any questions, let me know. There might be some gaps. Don't worry too much if you have some gaps. Let's move on and then set up Cloudera, and then we'll actually see whether we'll be able to understand all the concepts. As of now, one of the key concepts which I do not understand is nothing but key tab. I will try to come up with the explanation by the time we finish the configuration of Cloudera with respect to Kerberos. Okay, without understanding the core concepts of Kerberos, if you jump into Cloudera directly, then you will run into serious issues whenever you have to troubleshoot and fix the issues. Okay, that being said, if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll wrap up for today, and most likely tomorrow we will continue on setting up Cloudera with Kerberos. Let me see if there are any questions on the YouTube session. Yeah, there are no questions. That's fine. Okay, then make sure you practice, and probably if you get any questions, let me know. I'm very particular about learning Kerberos in depth. I have done quite a bit of times with respect to Kerberos, but I never get a hang on concepts. By following the documentation, I just set up the clusters with Kerberos. So those who are on YouTube, if you want to get the material and also the link to the video, you have to sign up for the newsletter. So the newsletter is available under notifyme.itwash.com. So everyone who actually sign up for the newsletter will get the material. Okay, so please sign up for that. Okay, then thank you very much for the team to join the session. We will catch up tomorrow. Bye.